I can't wait to talk about this.
Okay.
Um, okay, so probably even back when I went to college, 15 years ago, I noticed the one thing that missed or was completely missing, in my opinion, it was completely missing then was self-awareness. There was not this, it was not about nurturing the person that you're bringing the past over person through for. It was about proving that you had their person. And it's so clinical.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have another brilliant guest. We have the brilliant Dr. Tony Riley. Hi, Tony. Thank you for coming on the show again.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for having me again.
Well, it's late night Sunday evening here, and it's a little bit better for you over in Australia.
Yes, 8 a.m. in the morning. It's good and sunny.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
great effort. Being up early in the morning. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Now, you are Australia's #1 past life regression therapist, and you're widely known for that. But I want to talk about other things that you're not widely known for, and I mean by your mediumship and what you do with your mediumship. Can we talk about, because I was checking out your website and I found spiritual psychology on there. Can you tell us what that means?
Spiritual psychology is what the umbrella term is for all of the energetic or metaphysical aspects that we have incorporated into spiritual psychology or metaphysical psychology. So part of what we developed, the therapeutic aspect came through what started as past life regression. But of
Yeah.
course, when people were going into their past lives, they went to current life. If the core issue was in current life, they went there. If they needed a trip home to the in-between phase, they would go there. If they needed a visit with a passed over loved one, then that person would come in for them during the session. So because this actual process that we use to take people to their past lives, always to make something better now, it grew and it became something that was this tool, this process that we could use for absolutely everything or everywhere that anyone needed to go to help themselves and make their life better now, to heal trauma, to just give clarity, to help them understand themselves, all of these things. So that then becomes the spiritual psychology, but there's other wings.
Oh, can we talk about the other wings too? But before we go too far, and I'm going to bring it back to basics, there'll be people at home that don't necessarily, and I am playing devil's advocate because I have had a past life experience, and I'm kind of a skeptical medium, so I tend to question a lot sometimes of what I get because I think it's normal to a point, and it probably goes back to my upbringing. But past lives, it wasn't until I had the experience that I had a medical issue, nothing major. It was like a slight asthma, and after I witnessed this experience that I had, it disappeared, and it was because this barrel of hot tar burnt from my chest. Now, it sounds crazy for those listening at home, but this was a real experience to me. And, it went on from there. And I found out some of the details that I became aware of really existed. So then to turn that into as a tool to help to heal people is really empowering. You must have some wonderful stories you could share with us on that. I mean, can you share some of those stories?
No, Paul, I have so many stories and thousands of cases that I could tell you about. But I've done so many, it's like the same few just stick in my mind.
Yeah.
But I think back to what you said about your experience where asthma was cured, it's so wonderful with physical symptoms. And I think for any skeptic, there's no denying a physical symptom that clears or a physical visual symptom, even where sometimes we see people's rashes disappear or their
Yeah.
eczema clears up, all sorts of things. But I think the asthma it's quite a thing, and it's something that gets fixed. If it comes on later in life and it's out of the blue, or it comes on even, let's say, when someone's 10, but it's out of the blue, they're not born with this thing,
Yeah.
then usually it's come from a past life, and recalling it as you did fixes it. So it's that simple, and it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And it works for not just physical symptoms, it works for emotional symptoms and just and mental symptoms. Anything you can possibly imagine that would challenge us as a human is understandable in that space. There's two ways that it works, actually. There's always two. So either it's part of this person's mission,
Yeah.
even with serious health things that are terminal, for example, it's part of their mission, or there's going to be some sort of miracle cure that comes from the session. But if it's not to be fixed, then they will be told from their soul, who made the plan before birth, what is actually happening and why. And I think what happens then is it's not a reader that told them. Their soul told them what's happening, and they lean into it then, and they're at ease with. It's almost like they're reminded. Here's a reminder. Remember, this is what you were going to do. And that also is healing. So one way or another, when people come along for this, they would get some sort of clarity or healing.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to go on and talk about past lives, but you've got such a worldwide experience with this, and it's such a powerful healing experience. Because I want to talk to you about mediumship, but I promise I will get there. But
it's okay.
I just want to touch on, because you do so much with this as well, and you've created courses and workshops. One of the things I really like to do, how empowering is this if we could all remember and have a recall on past life? And I know you offer a little bit with that, don't you?
Yeah, there's a few things. There's a few ways that people can experience it, and obviously, not everyone can. Budget is an issue for some, so ideally, it's available to everybody because it is so powerful. So I guess at the base level, people can absolutely do this themselves.
Yeah.
So they could use a guided meditation. I do have those, but also I do host a workshop that's really affordable as well, where we go in a group. You obviously have your individual experience, but we guide within a group energy. And often, you would know this from mediumship, the group energy is very powerful. So it can make the experience even more powerful, just because the energy's built up all together.
I was just going to say, that's actually when I had my own experience, was in a group session.
Yeah.
So it was in person though, but it was in a group session. So these things are definitely possible. So coming back to the soul plan, and we interviewed a wonderful gentleman last week, Robert Schwartz, and he does a lot of work on the soul plan, and he's published a lot of books on it too. But you've also created a soul life map. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, Paul, back to the beginning of creating a new psychology, there were elements that we observed that would be getting straight to the core for people to make their life easier to navigate. So the life map is what we developed. It's based around numerology, but we developed this system that someone can come along to us, the therapists that we train, or they can learn to do it themselves. But the purpose of it is to help people understand their life mission. So numerology is extensive and it's wonderful, just as astrology is as well. But if you can get in, not everybody wants to learn about numerology or astrology, but they do want to learn about themselves. So we wanted to simplify what you need to know or what you're going to benefit from knowing. So we developed the life map to give somebody, anybody, a snapshot of their life mission. What are they here to do? I think, dare I say, no, I've been saying it a lot lately. People can tend to get a bit disappointed about what the mission in life actually is, but it's not a destination. It's not one thing that you do. It's not one success that you achieve. It's actually every minute of every day, and it's all so important. So, and usually each and every one of us has a specific, based on our birth date, we will have a specific challenge, and along with the challenge we have these strengths that come together because of the mission that we're doing. So that's what we're able to determine for them with the life map. It's very affirming, and it helps people understand their character.
Absolutely. So you mentioned numerology. Is that a part of that then, the numerological side of things within the life plan?
Yes, we definitely do. With the life map, we work with the date of birth, and not only the date of birth, it's all based around the date of birth, but we work with the energy of each numbers and the patterns that birth date goes into a life map. And also, there's lots of aspects that come in, and they're absolute. The mission's set before we're born, so therefore we are able to unpack that for somebody. What we can't tell exactly is what the circumstances will be to invoke the experiences that are outlined. Yeah. But if you're intuitive, and anybody who comes to do soul life psychology is intuitive and mediumistic. So, and I'm super intuitive and mediumistic. So because of that, you're able to see what actually the circumstances are, have been, are now, and potentially even what's coming. So that's how the life map works.
That's amazing. That's amazing, because I'm not particularly into numerology, but I'm sorry for saying that, guys. I'm not trying to be ignorant. I do want to learn more about numerology, because I keep seeing numbers, and I keep seeing 2222, and I keep getting them everywhere. And then I had 4444 this afternoon. They just keep popping up everywhere. So I need to learn more about those numbers and why they're coming at me.
I can tell you. Can I tell you about those number patterns? Okay, since you've mentioned them, I can tell you immediately that the twos are about, and I don't know what you're up to, but anyway, those 4 twos that you've seen are about working and successfully working with people's emotions. That's a very basic message for what that means. Okay. And your 444s is about being the front person, and also you're building really solid foundations now towards this business, bringing this business forward and making it really into something. So, and that can be the podcast and what you do with that. It could all relate back to that. But solid foundations, and also you being at the forefront of that and being the personality and the charisma behind what you're doing as well. So a bit of an entertainer as well. And I think we know with mediumship, when you are demonstrating, or you even got small groups, you are in some ways entertaining, because the individual who's not getting a message in that moment, they have to listen, and they're still there. So it certainly helps to have a bit of charisma and personality with what you're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So absolutely. There's your numbers.
And we've talked lots and lots, and I interviewed you about it must have been just over a year ago now. And we did a lot on Past Life, guys, so check that interview out. But I wanted to talk more about your mediumship, what it means to you, and what's coming, what is changing in mediumship. Because I'm throwing 3 questions at you. I'm so sorry. Let's start with one. What does mediumship mean for you?
Yeah, so mediumship in the evolution of what becomes this psychology was, I think for me, had to experience everything for myself to know what to integrate and how to integrate it. So mediumship for me has always been a means to help people through grief, to help people lose the fear of death so that they can live their life, to help people understand that their loved ones can still communicate with them. They can still communicate with them themselves. And also, I feel really strongly that we need to change the face of mediumship because, Paul, it's a little bit different in the UK from my observations, where it is a lot more normal. And I think maybe because of all the spiritualist churches and things over there. But in Australia and in America, it's somewhat new age. And new age is not self-aware. I know that's a big statement, but it's my observation. So, and it's been wonderful for people over the times. But I think there's also a lot of fear that is absolutely, it doesn't even go with it, but it's because people don't understand and they're repeating what other people have said. And it gives mediumship sometimes a bad name. And mediumship is surely one of the most beautiful things to be. And we all can be a medium, certainly for ourselves or to do it for other people, depending what your path is. But I think for me, mediumship came in as something that made me observe that it was very misunderstood and that it was actually so normal and also such a magical, wonderful healing tool that we have. So I think when I first went to Arthur Findlay College long ago, well, last time I went was 12 years ago until I went last month.
Yeah.
So it had been 12 years. Nothing changed. I mean, the building's exactly the same. But I think when I did go back in those early days, the best gift that I got from going to Arthur Findlay College was that it was very normal. They didn't use tools. They didn't talk about chakras. They didn't talk about anything new agey. It was just this person with this ability to connect to energy. And also you socialize after you've been learning all day. And to me, that's a very normal part of life. And so mediumship being integrated into your everyday life is the absolutely biggest gift that I think comes from it. And of course, whether you're into mediumship and you want to be making these connections for people, it's, even if you don't want to do that, it enhances your own intuition and it enhances your own psychic senses if you're also interested in using those. So I think working with the energy is just really enhancing our abilities to listen to ourselves and trust ourselves.
That's beautiful. Yeah, again, it comes back to my motivation of why I want to do this podcast, because I want to make mediumship mainstream, because I want to empower people that we. And I was going to ask you about, do you believe mediums are born or is it a natural process? Now, I personally believe it's a natural process, and you said that. So therefore, how wonderful could it be that we could all get the recipe from our great grandmothers on certain recipes? I know it doesn't work that way, but it's still great to have that conversation with our ancestors, and that guidance as well is really important.
Definitely. And I think when I see it working the best is, and I guess it's something I feel passionate about, is when people are in grief. And I noticed with all of my observations and study of developing this psychology is that grief is the biggest pinnacle that any individual will have in their lifetime. So as part of the life map, grief is the biggest turning point that we will experience. And I think it's a big process. It cannot possibly be understood or even fathomed until it happens to you. And then it's like, oh my God, I was telling people to just get over it, just get on with it. They can't, you can't. Grief comes in as, it doesn't feel like it, but it's a real gift to us to experience, because it really changes people. It changes us, because I feel what happens is it's the very first time usually that people go, why me? Why is this happening to me? What's going on? And so I see it as the gateway to wisdom. And one way or another, people don't just grieve from death. It happens for all sorts of things in life, and it's not everyone's path to grieve from the death of somebody. But one way or another, you will experience grief in your life. And then it's puts you into this internal process where you don't want to go out, and you're not looking outside, even though that's what we usually do. So it forces this inner contemplation. And as a result of that, you get to understand yourself better and understand more about why you're here. And I think probably the biggest thing that happens is you actually gain proper empathy for other people who are suffering, because suddenly you know that you did not want this to happen. It's terrible. You want it to stop. It doesn't stop because you've got no control over it. You have to go through it. So therefore, I think when other people are suffering, then you realize, oh, they didn't choose that. They're not choosing to be a sad sack every day and, mess our party up or tell me the same thing 50 times.
Yeah. But I don't think as a society we understand grief and the process well enough. Certainly, even as a medium, we come in, we give messages, and we're giving a 10-minute message, a demonstration, and then we move on to the next person. It almost becomes clinical. One thing I have learned and what I've observed, even I know people that get really upset when you mention a pet dog coming through, or if you're lucky enough to get the dog's name, it's great. But one thing dawned on me, that pain is another level of love, and the bigger the love that you had for that person, the deeper the pain you will feel. So there's a process of love within that pain and within that trauma. So you could twist it round and say the whole thing's about love anyway. But I want to ask a question really about, I think mediumship in the UK, sorry guys, I'm going to upset all the UK mediums. I don't mean to. I'm just asking the question. How can we change how can we change and move forward within mediumship? How do we change what we're doing now? Because I think sometimes some of the things that we've done in the past are a bit stayed, and we need to move forward.
I can't wait to talk about this.
Okay.
Okay. So probably even back when I went to college, 15 years ago, I noticed the one thing that missed, or was completely missing, in my opinion, it was completely missing then, was self-awareness. It was not about nurturing the person that you're bringing the passed over person through for. It was about proving that you had their person. And it's so clinical. It's okay, because I think that mediumship had to evolve, but then, and it's coming out of that now, even at Alpha Finley College. This was something that made me happy this time to notice, but they were much less clinical about the evidence that you need to get and prove that you've got their person, and more about leaning into, because we can feel who we've got. We can totally feel their personality, and they come in so beautifully. I got it all happening now. But what happens is you can get into it with that person and really, help them connect with their person. And I know that a lot of the training is very much about, don't have them ask questions, don't have them tell you what's going on. They want the recipient to just say, yes, I understand it, no, I don't, or maybe. But if you converse with them and you let them come in and say, oh yes, Dad used to say that to me.
Absolutely.
amplifies what's happening
Yeah.
instead of having them being like insipidly in the background. It's like, no, get into it with me because I think it grows the energy.
Absolutely, their mannerisms, their
Beautiful.
turn of phrases, their personality, their, you know, some of the things, the nicknames, the humor. That's what makes a person real. Absolutely, but it's really hard though because we live in a society that's quite skeptical. You know, we live in a society that's also governed by different religions, and let's not go down that path. I believe in a divine spirit. I believe there is a power. There is this power, this force of love, this divinity. But I don't really subscribe to any religions. They've not had a great track record, and we're not going to go down that avenue. But again, I think it's about humanity evolving, and I think it's a part of that. Do you notice that? And I'm sorry to sort of squeak back into past lives, but do you notice that sometimes with people's destiny, or do you see future stuff coming up in people's soul life in terms of what's coming next? So, I mean, I was led to believe that we can change the future in the present. Is that true?
No,
So we can't
no.
change what life we're
I
going into.
think no, no. These are my discoveries. They're also unpopular, but
Okay.
and I think by nature as people we are controllers. It's okay. It's part of the human experience. But when you realize that actually you're not in control of this and you surrender to it, then you start to notice the signs and you're getting affirmation about what to
Yeah.
do, where to go, rather than believing. Belief is also an emotion, by the
Yeah.
way, believing that you get to control what's happening, because the reality is nobody wants to suffer. So
Yeah.
they think that they are in control of that. But you're actually not. It's such an important part of the mission in life, every time, in every past life and in the future lives, because we are here for a human experience. So the human experience includes the very simple things in life. You know, they always talk about the simple things in life. So what happens is in every life past, present, the ones that we're going to live after here, it's all about the things that invoke emotion within
Yeah.
us. So it's about giving birth, getting married, partnering, relationships that were good or bad or however they went. And of course, as life goes on, we experience death as well. But all of the things that invoke emotion within us, which is everything actually, it's every thought, it's every action, that give us some sort of an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's all about. So surrender is your friend.
That's not easy when you're a control freak.
It's
Like
hard. It's
I
hard.
I realized when I get on a plane, the reason why I don't like riding on a plane is because I'm not the pilot. You know, I don't like other people driving me. It's because I like to drive. So there's a part of me that's a little bit of a control freak. So whether that was a past life fear, maybe I crashed in the plane once, I don't know. But I used to have certain things happen to me, like I went on a ferry once and that crashed at the quay. So I've had certain experiences. I'm like, well, maybe this is past life stuff. I don't know. I know I had a connection with the Second World War, but I'm not sure what it was. The other thing
Okay.
I was going to
Oh,
say, does that come up in dreams, past life recollection?
yeah, it does. It absolutely does. So it's how some people recall their past lives within their dreams. So it's very
Okay,
clean and they do not forget those dreams. They come through clear and yeah, they're unforgettable. You know how you said that you control and you feel in control behind the wheel of a car?
yeah,
Yes, it might be from things that have happened to you in a past life, maybe. But the thing is that we learn with not just, well, certainly with soul life psychology, is if that's what you need to feel good in daily life, that you've got to drive, then the ideal would be that you attract in someone who loves to be chauffeured. And then it's like, it's a happy medium, right?
Yeah,
So,
true.
but, and I think that's part of getting to know ourselves. And particularly as we are getting a bit older and have various relationships and things, you start to realize like, you actually need to be who you are and they need to be who they are. And then there's this unison that can happen
Yeah,
where one's got what the other doesn't, or this one doesn't get annoyed. Maybe this one's impatient and this one's not. So it's okay. It's a balance.
yeah,
So, yeah, so I think to your, to your story about driving, while it might be fixed in a past life or in past life recollection, it's still
yeah.
about just maybe you're just a perfectionist in this life, and that's a very human thing, and it's okay.
I'm I'm a Virgo, so there you go. That's why it looks tidy. I've put all the rubbish
Yeah,
up front, so you can't see it. So, so yeah, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So,
perfect.
so moving forward, I know it's so hard to talk about mediumship and not evolve or talk about the healing aspect of mediumship. We do need to embrace that side more. And a lot of people don't realize that mediumship isn't or is a part of that process. It's a healing process.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, I think people seem to look at mediums and put them on a pedestal more than people that are doing healing. And I think that's really important. And what you guys are doing, because you can become a past life therapist as well. You train people, am I right?
Oh, yeah. Past life
So
therapists and soul life psychology as well, they can learn.
so again, it's about empowering people. You know, I interviewed a medium
Absolutely.
recently that teaches children, well, she blindfolds them, teaches them to read because consciousness exists outside of the body. And these children are amazing. So check out that interview, guys, if you've not seen it. And it
Wow.
is absolutely amazing. It's called the ICU Academy, if you're wondering. But getting back to the
Wow.
one thing I wanted to talk about was trauma again and how we can heal trauma. I've found from my experience, a lot of people, like for instance, I was told that my son was my father in a past life. Now, I kid you not, he talks to me like he's my dad. And I have to remind him,
She's your
actually,
father.
it's the other way around. And I've actually had a medium who doesn't know anything to do with my life, my personal life, said to me, "Oh, your son used to be your father." And that's not the first time. And I met a friend today who said the same thing. Her father was her partner. Now, that sounds a bit wrong, I know. But in terms of souls coming together, moving forward through time, do you find that we do have these interlocked relationships with certain people?
Most definitely. Most definitely. And of course, there's no incest in the soul in the soul space. Um, but definitely, what if you start to explore who's in your life now, who's impacted your life, both positively and negatively, people that you've had challenges with or people that are big supporters of you, you will definitely find that you've been together before and in very, I was going to say, many and varied roles together.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting and it can help understand now if it's challenging, it's not always challenging, but if it is, it can really help you stop feeling challenged by a certain person when you realize, oh, that's why I feel this way about them, or this is why they're this way to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think basically it just lets you ease up on yourself and ease up on the people around you as well.
Yeah, yeah. I know we keep dipping from past life regression into back into mediumship, but it's all interlinked, isn't it? It's all connected. It
Yes, it's
really is.
interlinked. It absolutely, yes.
It is. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, oh gosh, honestly, I could talk to you for, I've got so many questions. They just keep flying in. Do you ever come across people that have a memory of a not on this earth experience?
Yes.
Are they generally
Yes.
positive?
So always, I mean, always,
Okay.
every single time. So I guess through the course of starting with past life regression, what happened is things would change and I would find I would get an influx of people going to off to other planets. So it's like, oh, I got to observe what they would say. And then there would be an influx of people having their passed over people come in, or they've gone in between lives.
So basically, because I've noticed there's so much stuff about people talking about UFOs. There's lots of government
Yes.
conspiracies. There's lots of why
Yep.
they're not telling the truth. There's so much
Yep.
military evidence now. So I'm kind of wondering, on the soul level, do people have that memory of being off planet? Without, again, I don't want to make it too
Yeah.
dramatic, but these things are real. Something is going on for sure.
Something's going on for sure, but I can tell you, whenever anybody recalls a life not on earth, it's always positive. It's always much more energetic than it is here. So I guess as people, we're quite dense
Yeah,
with our bodies, but they are usually very, very much more energy. Sometimes they appear human-ish, but not the way that we do now, not quite. And it might be that they're taller or they're blue. I
yeah.
had a spate of people talking about being blue people for a while.
Wow.
And I think what was really interesting, it's never been my passion, that area. I
No,
believe it.
no.
I believe it. I've seen too many people talk about it for it not to be very important. But
Yeah,
usually what I found was the people that did recall those kinds of lives, they also were really credible people. And I feel like it didn't happen for me. I already know that, I know it, that it's real. But I think for them, they're like, what on earth was that?
yeah,
And I think it must have to change them for what they're doing in their mission, where
yeah.
they become more open and one way or another. It's, if they see it, it's to help with whatever they're doing now. Maybe, to be more open about some experiences that they've had, or off the planet, I mean, or sightings or anything like that, will always be to help us now. And they always say it feels lovely there. I've seen them go to many different places, but always it's lovely, nice energy.
Well, do you think sometimes it's so vast that we can't, in our human mind, conceptualize it?
I would say yes if we're trying to conceptualize it logically. But if you have transcendent experience, so you have some sort of out of body experience, whether it comes in a dream or you have a facilitated out of body experience, which of course is what past life is, or going in between,
Yeah,
then you know that it's simple. It's
yeah,
actually not complex. I think science trying to find answers make it complex or seem complex. It's not. When you go out and you're told, or you see what you had this experience, then it's like, oh, it's really not that complex. But I think nothing beats an actual experience of your own. It's like this affirmation that your logic is almost forced to be put aside and be like, well, I didn't make it up, it happened.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Coming back now to healing trauma and seeing patterns, I guess, do you discover those patterns in your work within people's lives?
Absolutely. Even back to the life map, we can tell what they're going to be, what their patterns are going to be. And then it's a matter of the individual recognizing them themselves. And they're meant to happen. To be honest, even if they come along to fix something, it will be at the time that it's meant to happen. And they're meant to have been struggling through these patterns, continuing to perpetuate them and have the same thing happen again. But at the time where they're ready to move through it and it will heal it, is where they'll be, I was going to say confronted, because it can be very confronting, presented with the obvious pattern. And it's usually so simple, and people are like, how did I not see this? How have I not recognized it? And I suppose patterns would look at something like, probably the most common thing that people can recognize are relationships that they form. Well, it
Sure.
doesn't have to be love relationships, but relationships that they form. And this, it's not known to them. So you're continuing to do the same thing because you want something from it, from this
Yeah,
relationship or that relationship or that. And until you see it, you keep doing it. And then when you realize what that had come back to you, and it wasn't actually really about these people we've been in a relationship, it was all about us. And we admit what we needed from it, or what we wanted, whether we got it or not. That's where the healing happens. And it's so liberating. So
Because it
liberating.
sounds
It's like you take personal
sorry,
responsibility.
it sounds like
That's
we
okay.
keep repeating the pattern until we learn and move forward. Which
I think I think that's one of the things that the New Age movement perpetuated, was that you're here to learn lessons. But when you are working with past lives, since we were cavemen and we came on the planet as humans, we've done the same thing over and over and over and over again, past thousands of times. So it's not about us learning, it's about us having an experience. And I feel like what I can see beyond our individual contribution and having an experience is, I do believe that humanity has an evolutionary process, and we are, a certain way through that now. And I feel like even what you described with your layers is very much about the evolution of humanity. You can see it even through studying the generations
yeah,
and what they each contributed to humanity, and as we evolved. But yeah, it's an evolution. And I think the other thing I'd like to say is, people believe that it's their soul that's learning, but the thing is, it's not the soul. The soul is all knowing already. It's pure. It's all knowing. When we come here, we are having an experience, and yes, it might seem like we're learning something for the first time. But that's where, if we're struggling with what we're learning, which might be abandonment, which will be the perpetuator of our pattern, for example, then when we go into a past life, we see where we've done that before, maybe many times, but you'll see it, and it helps someone recognize the sensation that they're getting and what they're doing now and why. So that's where the patterns are then also obvious to them, like, oh, and it's where the healing happens.
yeah, yeah. So, do you believe that there's only a part of the soul within the physical being, and the soul is still in? Because I believe, my personal belief is, the soul is a multidimensional thing, that it's not completely connected to the physical body. It's an aspect of the soul. Is that true? Do you have a theory?
It's certainly a portion. A portion of the soul energy is here. And maybe a simple way to explain is, and bringing it back to how mediumship falls
Yeah,
in, is when someone dies, we can still contact them even though they most likely have reincarnated. We can
yeah,
still contact them as a medium.
yeah,
And the likelihood of them being back here is so high that it's not funny. And you still can contact the spirit of who they were. We still can do that for as long as it's needed by that person who's still alive. So certainly the soul energy is, it's omnipresent, and it's just always there. So we're just bringing a portion of it into the spirit that we are this time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know people have different ideas, different philosophy, and different teachings, but
Yeah.
I'm basing that on some of my own personal experience. That I know in readings, I've brought people through that have been passed over 400 years, and I've connected with them.
Yeah.
How did I get that information? Which then kind of brings me on to my next question. Is the Akashic Records a concept, or is it a part of the soul? So I know Edgar
Oh,
Cayce,
okay.
he brought up the whole soul life readings, going into the library, the Akashic Records. I think he was the first known medium to use that phrase of the Akashic Records. Now, is it a human concept, or is it something that really exists?
Oh, anything that's human at all, which records are, records are,
Yeah,
the perception that there's a library, that is absolutely human. So I think that the Akashic records is probably a way that people who are very logical, and we're humans, they can process the fact that there are these records that they've lived before, and this is what they did, or this is who they were, and this is what they're potentially doing in the future. So the Akashic records would certainly be something that comes to us from our soul that is palatable
Yeah,
for a logical human.
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
We need concepts to believe in something,
we do. Yes,
and
we do.
that's where. But do you think sometimes that can inhibit us because we conceptualize rather than being more open? We need to have something tangible for us to believe in. Is that more about our own infancy in terms of our unfoldment? Because do you think we hold it
I
back?
think, well, for first thing is all souls are, there's no young souls and old souls. We're all from the same energy. But I think,
Maybe a better way to put it is, does it hold us back? Can we be more open? Can we? Because I think there's a part of us that's on the edge of something. That I think there's a lot of people talking about a shift within us, moving up to the fifth dimension. I almost said 5G. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. It's not a phone signal, but moving up to a fifth dimension. So do you think we can hold ourselves back by having that experience? So we're kind of coming out of a Victorian era, where
we
we
are,
were, even governments today spoon feed us, religion spoon feeds us what to believe,
yeah,
rather than being open-minded and question.
yeah.
So I'll just find it all.
Oh,
It's too
look,
early for these questions, isn't it, on a Monday morning?
I think that the moment that an individual starts to question and think for themselves, they are leaps and bounds ahead in this life.
Yeah,
But yes, I think a lot of people need the concepts, humanified concepts, even of how the afterlife works, or even how between lives work, depending on where they're at this life. Where are they at? How can they receive this information that's palatable for them? And I think what I notice is some people, predominantly people, don't see it humanified for me now with the people that come in, but certainly in the early days, they would see things in a very humanistic way. Past lives is always human, can I say? But what I'm talking about here is when they go beyond and they have a real transcendent experience or a metaphorical experience. But they seem to be able to, they need to get it at the level that they're at or the level that they're ready for. So for a good example of this might be where people talk about their guide energy, and they might see their guide as an American Indian or a very human form of energy. But once you get further along in your development, what you might see is swirling purple color
yeah,
rather, and never see the human form ever again.
yeah,
So it changes, and then you become more sensitive to the subtle changes in energy. So I think it really just depends where people are at in
yeah.
their mission, in their path,
Because
how they
that's what
get it.
brings you back to mediumship and the Victorian era, in which we were taught to demonstrate and provide evidence. It was very much
Yeah,
based on that. But I do think that mediumship is on a point where we need to change to adapt, to be more open to our human evolution and the soul's evolution. So it's quite exciting times. I know there's a lot of transcendence or interference even, but these things are happening. It's quite interesting. Now, I wanted to ask you before we go, and we can't thank you enough for coming in early doors on Monday morning. Well, great effort. Thank you so much. But we wanted to ask you, what's next? What's coming up for you guys?
okay, a couple of things. First thing is our soul life psychology will, there'll be an intake next year, early next year in March. We'll have an intake for that, so you can start to train to become you actually can't call yourself a psychologist unless you actually are, but you can call yourself a metaphysician, soul life
Okay.
metaphysician, or therapist. But so there's that. That's coming next year. You can see all about it on the website. The big thing that we're working on at the moment is everything's being restructured so that mediumship is becoming quite involved, and grief is coming to the forefront because it's something that everybody will have in their lifetime. So it's almost like some people want to explore their past lives, but at some point everyone will experience grief. So in order for us to reach people, we need to go through where they're suffering to reach them. So people mothers who've lost children, doesn't matter what age, whether it's been through suicide, or I know that Robert Schwartz talked about suicide. I didn't listen to the episode, but I loved the heading. These concepts that are so messed up, they've become so misunderstood.
Yeah.
And suicide is one of those. These are the things that we want to talk about and bring in so that people who think that their loved one is copying it because they did go in that way, we need to clear this up so that they're not feeling guilty or not feeling terrible about the way that their person went. So we're going to be talking a lot about death, or the concepts of death that are misunderstood. Being suicide, there's others as well. And I think the magic that actually being your own medium can bring into your life, where if you need to or want to connect to your person or people in the afterlife, that you absolutely can. And I think that's where, because the mission, Paul, is to reach mainstream, you see. For me, I was always told that. And 20 years ago, it was like, this is to come to mainstream. It's taken 20 years. Of course, to me, it seems like it's much more in mainstream now. But now it's time to really look at mainstreamers and how do we reach them? Not to indoctrinate them, it's to help them. Yeah. So I think that grief and mediumship, be your own medium. Maybe we're going to use different words, but that's the new mission. And we want to have, it available to people on any budget or at wherever they're at that stage of their lives.
Yeah. Well, you do such brilliant work. And where can we find you online?
Oh, you can find me at TonyRileyInstitute.com, and I'm on all social media as well, usually as Dr. Tony Riley. But yes, on the website there's workshops, interactive workshops, courses, certification courses, or you can have sessions as well. So
and
all of
free,
it's available.
Yeah, and free content too, which is valuable for people too. And you guys do such great work, and you can also train to be a part of it as well, which is really quite exciting.
You absolutely can. Yeah.
Awesome. Dr. Tony Riley, thank you so much for coming in on Monday morning. We can't thank you enough for coming back on again at Spiritual Talk. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.